Okay, so what did I think of Game of Thrones Season 7, Episode 1, Dragonstone? It wasn't the best Game of Thrones episode ever, but I definitely enjoyed it. I think I really enjoyed it because I had been without Game of Thrones for so long, so even if they had put out a complete garbage episode, I probably would have enjoyed it regardless. The episode opens at the Twins with Walder Frey giving a speech to all of the Freys. I really enjoyed the speech that he gave because he was talking about the Red Wedding in a really triumphant way, but what he was saying wasn't positive. You know, he was saying you murdered a pregnant woman, you killed a mother of five. I quite enjoyed that. It was quite obvious how that scene was going to play out because, you know, you cut to Walder Frey and, I mean, he's dead. And for a split second, I remember thinking, is this a flashback? And then I was like, of course not, it's Arya, obviously. So obviously you know it's Arya. You pretty much know that she's gonna kill everyone, take the face off, and then walk out. I feel like they knew that, and it's not a knock against it, it's just sort of a comment. I think you're supposed to know what's going to happen, really. It's very different to the scene at the end of season 6 where you don't necessarily know what's going to happen. You may have figured out that that girl was Arya, but, you know, it was still a mystery as to what was going to happen. When the wine came out, I was immediately like, well, they're dead, that's poison. It was a very good opener. It was probably the most eventful scene from the whole episode. It was a pretty quiet episode, really. It's essentially just people seeming to gather their thoughts as to what's about to happen, really. So after that scene, we then get the opening sequence. There was no location in Essos, which was really weird to see after having an entire 6 seasons of having at least one location in Essos, because regardless of whether other characters were there or not, Dany was always there. And it was really weird to see not see the camera pan over and show us what Dany was doing. So, you know, we're probably never gonna get anything in Essos again, and that's kind of sad because I really enjoyed Essos personally. I find it so much more interesting than Westeros. I am very happy that Dany is now in Westeros, so that's just a minor thing. It's not really a complaint, it's just sort of a comment that I had. It was really good to see Old Town appear on the map. I love it when new locations appear on the map. It just makes me happy. We hadn't sort of had a new location in a while. And it didn't appear on the map last season, which kind of annoyed me, but we were only there for like one episode for 5 minutes, so it didn't really matter. But since it's going to be a consistent location this season, it seems, it's obviously going to be on the map. So I suppose I should talk about the stuff with Sam in Old Town now. That did drag a bit, I'll be honest. I didn't hate it. It was interesting to finally see the Citadel. I mean, we saw it last season, but not really much. It was comforting to finally see what happened there, how it worked, even though we were with Sam most of the time, so didn't really get to see anything too interesting, but we got to see the basics. The main interesting thing that came out of that was the scene with Jorah. As soon as that scene came on, it made up for all the shit that I thought was boring there. When his arm first shot out, I remember for a split second I was like, is that one of the dead men? And then he speaks and you realize, oh, that's Jorah's voice. And you could tell something was going to happen in that scene too, because it was sort of dragging a little bit, and it was a quiet scene, and I was like, okay, something's going to happen with this cell here. It was really interesting to see the progression of his grayscale. I feel like the makeup artists have done a really good job with that. It looked disgusting. We got to see it for not very long, but it looked foul. I hope that comes to something. Whether he dies or not, I don't care, but that needs to come to something. I'm not sure if he genuinely thinks he's going to get help at the Citadel, or if they've just locked him in there and then they're gonna send him off to Valyria when they think he's too far gone. Don't know, maybe they're doing experiments, because Dany did order him to find a cure, so he may have he's obviously gone to the Citadel thinking that he's gonna get a cure. Whether that's happening or not, whether they're actually helping him or they think he's a lost cause is another thing entirely. King's Landing. It was really interesting to see how empty the place looked. That's always been the busiest place. I suppose the most main characters have been there at once, but it seemed so empty because all we got was Cersei and Jaime. Didn't get anyone else. It was good to see it was just Cersei and Jaime, so there was no characters, there was no blocking what they actually wanted to say to each other. It was all them and it was truthful. But I did have a bit of an issue with Jaime. I didn't get nearly enough from what he thought about Cersei. Whether he's just faking it, I don't know. He might have an agenda going on, but Jaime killed the Mad King so that he wouldn't do what Cersei ended up doing. And he's not mad at her for that. I think she actually asks, "Are you mad at me?" And I can't remember exactly what he says, but I'm pretty sure he doesn't say that he is. You killed the Mad King and took all that shit for killing him so that King's Landing wouldn't blow up. And then Cersei does it, like, and you're not mad at her. You're gonna let her blow the Red Keep up next and the whole city? Is that gonna be all good? So, I mean, the Sparrows are dead. I don't think you care about that. But, like, Marjorie, Mace, Loras Tyrell, that's all good. Your uncle, even if you thought them as enemies and you don't care, what about the innocent lords and ladies, members of the court that were there that had nothing to do with it? What about all the innocent people around the Sept, some of whom were probably poor and never did anything to any of you? That's all good. She's just murdered tons of people. She's pretty much murdered Tommen, in my opinion. Which, can we talk about that? Cersei, even if Tommen didn't die, he would have fucking hated you. He's not Joffrey. Joffrey would have been fine with it. Tommen would have fucking hated you. What the hell did you think he was going to do? Don't know why Cersei wants to be queen, because all her kids are dead. She told Tyrion that she didn't have her kids. She'd kill herself. Go do that, bitch. Props to Lena Headey for making me go on that kind of rant. You do your job well for me to lose my shit that much about something that's not real. Yeah, but just how cool Jaime seemed to be with it was a bit annoying to me, considering that look he gave her at the end of season 6. He didn't look cool with it. He looked like he wanted to murder her. I did quite like the scene with her and Jaime, and they were standing on this painting of Westeros that Cersei's having done, which is sort of her equivalent to the table that Dany now has at Dragonstone. Quite liked, you know, she was visually able to point out where her enemies were. She was talking about her enemies. You know, Jon Snow to the north, Olenna Tyrell to the west, Dorne to the south, and Dany to the east. She needs to be more worried than she is. She seemed very blasé about it. I mean, I think Cersei just has this arrogance to her that she's always had. She's never really been too worried about things that she should be worried about. I did like how she's finally talking about Dany. I remember in season 4, they're talking about her at the small council, and Tywin is actually saying, you know, she needs to be dealt with. And Cersei's like, "Oh, conquered Meereen with what?" And they're like, "All these Unsullied, all these second sons, 3 dragons. You don't think you should be worrying about her, Cersei?" And now that Dany's actually in Westeros, now Cersei's bloody worrying about her. What the fuck happened to Euron Greyjoy? He looked like a fucking Hot Topic employee. I mean, it didn't bother me, it's just kind of a comment. I thought he looked cool, but considering how he looked last season, it's just very different, that's all. Cersei says no to his proposal, which I can kind of understand. I mean, she does definitely need allies. She's got, like, no allies at this point, no fucking shit. Her main allies were the Tyrells, and they're fucking gone for obvious reasons. So, I understand why she says no, because Euron is very likely to just get what he wants and then fucking murder some bitches. Get what he wants and screw them over, essentially. I did find it interesting that he says, "I'm going to go get a gift and bring it back to you, and then you'll say yes," or whatever he says. I'm very curious if that's going to turn into anything. I feel like they wouldn't put it there if it didn't. I'm very curious as to what this gift is and whether that's going to be resolved this season or what. I want to know what he would possibly bring her. Stuff in Winterfell. Actually, no, I'll talk about the stuff beyond the wall first. With that scene with the dead men marching, I remember when we first saw giants in, I think it was season 2, I remember thinking, the first time we saw them, I remember thinking, can they be dead men? Because we'd never seen that. We'd only ever seen just normal people as in the Army of the Dead. And I remember thinking that every time we saw a giant, I was like, if the White Walkers can kill the giants, are they going to be like in the Army of the Dead? And it was very satisfying to see that. I was finally like, yes, yes, I've been thinking this since season 1. So I was so happy to see that, and that looked awesome. And how the fuck they were going to deal with that, who knows. And so we had Bran and Mira arriving at the wall. It's good. It was good to see Ed, even though for like 5 seconds, being Lord Commander. Because at the end of season 6, he was like, no, Jon's the Lord Commander, but now he actually is. And to see himself kind of carry himself differently, I liked. So whether Bran and Mira go to Winterfell, I mean, where else are they going to go, really? Jon and Sansa were still at the wall. They'd all be reunited, but I'm assuming they're going to reunite in Winterfell, because where else are they going to go? And also, Jon is actually preparing for, you know, the threat beyond the wall and the long night and all of this now. So I feel like he would actually believe Bran and what Bran has seen and all of that. And I feel like that would be all good. And he would actually trust Bran. I did think, does Bran know about Rickon? I feel like if he did, we would know it. We would be told it. And he's probably going to feel a bit guilty about that because he gave Rickon to the Umbers. Well, he didn't give Rickon to the Umbers, but he told Rickon to go to the last hearth, to the Umbers. So I'm interested about that. Winterfell. Just a little quick side note, I quite enjoyed Bran beating the shit out of Podrick. Really liked that scene. We have the scene with Jon addressing his men. This goes normally. At first, I want, everyone to get dragonglass. I want everyone to train every day, even the girls. I want the wildlings to protect the wall, all of this. And then he talks about the Karstarks and the Umbers, and I agreed with his decision because he's talking about that the last hearth and the Carhold are the closest to the wall, the closest castles to the wall. And he's saying that the sins of their fathers aren't their fault, and that he's not going to strip them of their ancestral homes. And fucking Sansa loses her shit in front of everybody. Well, not loses her shit, but she sounded like a little petulant child, in my opinion. I agree with Jon that they need everyone they can south of the wall. Killing the Karstarks and the Umbers, who have men and know how to fight, what does that accomplish? It just gives you less people to help you fight and gives you more enemies, which you don't need at this time. He's making a very smart decision, in my opinion. And that's just my opinion. Let me know if you think differently. I get Sansa's point of view, but don't bring it up in front of his men like a petulant child. So what I saw of that online, it seemed to be 50-50 whether people thought Jon was right and agreed with me, or whether Sansa was right. But the majority seemed to think that, the majority consensus seemed to be, whether they thought Sansa was right or wrong, they still think she shouldn't have brought it up in front of her men. She should have talked about it later. I definitely agree with it. I thought bringing it up in front of his men, what did that accomplish? I suppose maybe if Jon had talked about it with her beforehand, we would have avoided this whole situation. I didn't like seeing Jon called Your Grace. I found that very weird. It never occurred to me that Jon would want to be a king or would be a good king. And so it was just weird to hear him having people call him Your Grace. I didn't enjoy that. And they get the letter from Cersei. I know she's the queen. And Sansa is saying, I know Cersei, you don't know her, I know her. She works, she's not gonna stop until you're gone. Which, I enjoyed her saying that. I actually agreed with her. Sansa knows Cersei quite well. She spent 3 seasons with her and a part of season 4 with her. So clearly she knows Cersei. Which I enjoyed that more than her talking about Ramsay. She was saying she knew Ramsay and all of this. She was with Ramsay for like 5 fucking minutes. I'm sorry. I don't think she knew him inside and out. I think, yes, she had some insight, but not as much as she thought she had. I think she has a lot more insight on Cersei, and they should definitely listen to her on that part. Littlefinger, can he fuck off already? I'm so sick of him. I loved that Brienne essentially told Sansa the same thing. Sansa is correct. They need his men. But I'm so done with him. I just know he's gonna fuck someone over soon. The Ed Sheeran cameo. The response on social media to this seemed to be mostly negative. What was the point of it, really? I remember hearing that he was gonna be in it, and I sort of thought, oh, okay. I didn't really care, but it seemed very shoved in. That entire scene, I really enjoyed that scene. It was just glaringly obvious that it was Ed Sheeran. I was so distracted by the fact that fucking Ed Sheeran was there. I didn't see him as a Lannister soldier. He was Ed Sheeran. It was just really irritating. And they've had musicians and people cameo before, like in the Red Wedding, like members of Coldplay are there, like playing instruments, playing the Reigns of Castamere. But that wasn't obvious. You don't even know it's them. You might recognize them, but it doesn't take away from the scene. Whereas this did. It was nice, I'll admit, to hear. I like it when people are singing in Game of Thrones. So it was nice to actually hear someone singing, and someone that actually could sing as well. Like, it was nice to hear a good singer singing a song from that world. Enjoyed that it was just Arya and these Lannister soldiers just sitting there chilling. I quite enjoyed that Arya can see that they're just innocent people. They're just following orders. They're not doing anything. And I really did enjoy it for that reason. It was a very nice scene. It was just a very laid back scene by Game of Thrones standards, and I just quite liked it. Going now to the scene that I suppose everyone wants me to talk about. Dany's in Westeros, motherfuckers! Dany's finally in Westeros. I loved that that scene was silent. I enjoyed actually seeing Dragonstone, because we never really got to see Dragonstone in the show. All we saw was the walls, like the outside walls, when like Stannis or someone was on the beach, and then we just got the room with the table that Aegon had carved in it. And we got a few other rooms, but they weren't of any substance. It was like Shireen's room or a dungeon or something. So it was finally good to actually see the castle and to actually see the Targaryen influence on it. I mean, they built the castle. To actually see these dragon heads and these dragon sculptures and things like that was very satisfying. And I think it's very interesting that they never showed any of the Targaryen-esque stuff in the castle or any of the dragon sculptures or anything while Stannis was there. But now they're showing it now that Dany's there. That was just something that I noticed that I quite enjoyed. So yeah, it was very satisfying to see that and to see the dragons flying over Dragonstone. And we got to see the throne that is there. We never got to see that with Stannis. I quite enjoyed that Stannis's flaming heart banner was still hanging in one of the rooms. I quite enjoyed that because it looks old, it's dusty, but like you can tell like Stannis was here and it's not ignoring that. I quite enjoyed that little link, and how Dany rips it down as well. And then she walks into the room with the table, and that's very satisfying to see her with that table that her ancestors built. Was very satisfying. And then, you know, shall we begin? And we end. And that was just so satisfying to see. Even if it was a terrible scene, even if they'd done it poorly, it's just so satisfying to finally see her there. I don't know what's going to happen in the next episode. I did see that in the coming out, you know, next week on Game of Thrones, they had the people in the North actually talking about Dany. They're saying, you know, a Targaryen can't be trusted, which that's really cool because the people in the North have pretty much never talked about Dany. The people in King's Landing have, but like people in the North never have, aside from Aemon Targaryen like once or twice. So that'll be interesting to see. They're probably talking about her because Sam has now figured out how much obsidian there is on Dragonstone, and he's probably going to tell Jon, and Jon's going to say we need to deal with, like, we need to make a deal with her. I'm pretty sure I saw a very short clip of Alaria Sand and Yara Greyjoy making out. By that logic, we're thinking that all of Dany's allies are going to be in the same room, so that will be interesting. I hope Olenna Tyrell is there. You think she will be because she was in Dorne last season. So you're thinking maybe she'll be there. I hope she is because I want to see the Sand Snakes, however shit they are. The Sand Snakes, the Greyjoys, Olenna Tyrell, Tyrion, and Dany all working together. That would be so good. Yeah, so high hopes for season 7. Let's hope all goes well, and I will see you guys next week with the review for the second episode. So peace, goodbye, Valum Rogulis.